Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Friday morning by Derek Brown and by Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, it's our key questions show. Before we dive into the show, we want to do a quick recap of Thursday Night Football, as we often do. 49ers 36, Seahawks 24 in this one. I'm not actually sure what the single biggest takeaway is. There were kind of two that I wanted to highlight that I'll ask you guys about. One of them is obviously the running back situation for San Francisco. Jordan Mason did leave the game. He came back in for a play and then left again, didn't play pretty much the entire second half. We did get a very long run to close it out from Isaac Guerendo on the San Francisco side. He didn't do a ton prior to that. Is he a priority ad for you guys next week? Are you waiting to see what happens, with some of the injury updates from Mason? How are you approaching this backfield right now, D-Bro?
I think Guerendo needs to be at the top of the list. I think Patrick Taylor is definitely going to be involved, but if you want the upside play, if Mason were to miss time, which we can't discount because he tried to come back in the second half, got one carry. If everybody bet Jordan Mason rushing overs like me, you would have liked to see one more carry for Jordan Mason, but it didn't happen. So I think Guerendo showed exactly what you want out of the type of handcuff-like situation. Like, he has the big play opportunity and the ability. We could debate on raw talent for days, but he does have that straight line speed. If you give him a crease, he could take one to the house, and he almost did it last night. So Guerendo needs to be picked up everywhere by people.
Fitz, do you agree that Guerendo needs to be picked up, even if, let's say we get good news on Jordan Mason in the coming week, and it seems like he's going to play in week 7? Do you still think Guerendo needs to be rostered, even though in that scenario he's really a backup to a guy that's already serving as a backup?
Yeah, a workload in a Kyle Shanahan offense for a running back is like a golden ticket. It is a Willy Wonka golden ticket for fantasy. And, Isaac Guerendo playing behind a guy who now probably isn't going to be fully healthy by next week. So, yeah, I do think he's a priority ad. And I was entertained by Isaac Guerendo being on Twitter today asking EA Sports not to dock him in his speed rating because he chose to go down inside the 5-yard line.
I thought he chose to go down when I was watching that live, and then I saw some people on Twitter that were saying the Seahawks were dumb for tackling him. I know the Seahawks did kind of dive whichever defender it was and kind of bring him down a bit, but it looked to me like he was sliding on purpose too.
Yeah, he did get tripped up, so it was a little vague and hard to tell, but to me it looked like he kind of did take a dive inside the 5, and then they went on and scored the touchdown anyway, so he might as well just have walked into the end zone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The question I wanted to bring up, Fitz, on the Seahawks side, Kenneth Walker, somebody I was really high on in August, so I have him in a lot of places. Not the best running day, 14 for 32. He did get a touchdown, which helped. But I want to bring up the pass catching. 8 targets, caught all 8 of them, just 37 yards. But that is a real difference maker in PPR and half PPR leagues. And I think it was Rich Rebar, friend of the show, was tweeting last night how it just really raises the floor. And there's like a case for Walker as RB1 rest of the season. I don't think he said he had him there, but like with pass catching like this, you can at least build that case for a guy like Walker. Do you feel the same way, Fitz, just seeing the pass catching last night?
Yeah, pass catching, add that to the mix with Kenneth Walker, to the explosiveness he gives you as a runner, and we are talking about a top 5 fantasy back. So very exciting what we saw from him in the passing game.
Yeah, Debra, what did you think?
I remember a time, boys, when people on Twitter said that Kenneth Walker didn't have hands and that he probably couldn't catch a football. So it's really nice to see the pass catching upside. Honestly, this makes him matchup proof. You're telling me he's got 8 targets in each of the last 2 games. He's had at least 36 receiving yards in each of the last 3 games. Yeah, he's matchup proof. Regardless, if he's not going to get it done on the ground, and we've seen he can do that because he's one of the best rushing talents in the NFL. If he's not doing that, if he's getting this type of pass game usage, right now I've got him as RB4 in my rest of season rankings, but I think the conversation for him starts at RB2. I think he's firmly in the same conversation as Breece Hall and Derrick Henry right now.
Interesting game for the passing attack for Seattle because they had to throw a lot because they were trailing for most of the game. So Geno did get over 300 yards, but it wasn't a good Geno day, and so a lot of the receivers struggled because of that. JSN just caught 5 of 9
Metcalf getting
targets.
a 60-yard touchdown wiped off the board by a stupid penalty.
DK Metcalf 3 catches on 11 targets, just 48 yards, and we missed out on a 50-yard touchdown on an irrelevant penalty.
We also missed out on the short touchdown where his big toe was over the line, man.
Brutal.
Tough day if you were a DK Metcalf investor.
Yeah.
Or if the bet is overs like me.
I don't think we're worried about him long term, but that was fortunate. By the way, like I've been saying this for years, I don't think illegal shift penalties should exist. I don't think illegal formation penalties should exist. I think as long as the 11 guys are lining up on the right side of the line of scrimmage, I don't care where people stand, and I don't think it should be something that the NFL litigates. I've said that for a long time, and I said that especially so last night as a DK Metcalf manager. All right, let's get into our questions here. Just a quick reminder for everyone that all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. And if you're juggling multiple fantasy football teams and feeling overwhelmed, Fantasy Pros will help you simplify things. With Fantasy Pros Multi-League Assistant, you can see the latest news, notes, and rankings for every single player across all your teams. It's all in one spot, making your path to victory clearer and easier. Dive in and let us help you dominate all your leagues with the Multi-League Assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. All right, guys, let's start off with the London game, which we have another one of this week. Another early fun start for the folks on the West Coast. This time it's Jaguars at Bears. Technically, at Bears, they're the home team, although really it should be the Jags, I guess, given how often they play in London. And I want to ask you guys, which of these players coming off of his best game of the season is most likely to stay hot in week 6? Caleb Williams, quarterback for the Bears, or Tank Bigsby, running back for the Jaguars? Debro, what do you think?
I think it's going to be Caleb. If there's any get-right elixir in the NFL right now, it's either facing the Indianapolis Colts defense or facing the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we're seeing more and more upside and better play out of Caleb Williams. So going against a pass defense that's allowed the second most passing yards per game and the most fantasy points via passing, Caleb is knocking on the door of QB1 rankings for me this week.
Do you agree with that, Fitz? Where do you have him ranked?
I do. I have Caleb ranked QB 12, so he's a low-end QB1 for me, and the Jaguars have given up the most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, 23.1. They're giving up 8.1 yards per attempt, and we've got Caleb probably feeling pretty good about things after his best performance, I think, to date this season, best fantasy performance also. I like Tank Bigsby, but they're not going to marginalize Travis Etienne. He's going to have a role in this offense, and it's not a bad matchup for Tank this week. It's not as if the Bears have been lights out against the run, but I do worry about the possibility that Tank can be game scripted out in certain circumstances because he did a 28-yard catch last week. That was his second catch in 22 NFL games. We were just talking about the value that Kenneth Walker's pass catching gives him. No pass catching value really for Tank. And that makes his value fragile week to week. If the Jaguars, who have not been a good team, fall behind by multiple scores, all of a sudden you're looking at a scenario that's really bad for Tank because you don't know what he's going to get as far as touches if the Jags fall behind.
Yeah, it was the clear outlier so far in the season last week for Tank. So, he hasn't done it much. It was, to be fair, kind of an outlier for Caleb as well in terms of the final line. It was the first time he's finished inside the top 12 amongst quarterbacks was week 5. He was QB 6. His next highest finish besides that was QB 14. Everything else was in the 20s or the 30s. So, it hasn't been this amazing fantasy start to the season, but, he's definitely, I feel like just anecdotally looking better. And by the way, the friendly matchups are going to continue. Caleb has a bye next week, but then after that is Washington. So he's in a really nice stretch of defenses that are really appealing for fantasy. Debra, did you mention where do you have Tank ranked this week?
I've got Tank. He was knocking on the door of RB2 status, probably in the high RB3 range. Where are you at, Tank Bigsby? I've got him at RB. I got him at RB29 right now. He's floating in that high-end RB3 range.
That's about consensus. He's RB27 in ECR, but in that same kind of late 20s range. Let's go to the next question here. And this is just a super fun matchup. Commanders at Ravens. Two of the most prolific offenses in football this season, both in terms of the actual scoring and in terms of some of the advanced stuff, like with DVOA. Like by any metric you look at, these are two of the best offenses in football. We're obviously expecting tons of scoring in this one. Most of the players in this game that we would ever be considering starters are pretty clear starters for fantasy. So I just want to kind of take a second to play devil's advocate and make you guys pick one player each to make the case to fade in fantasy this week relative to where they're ranking, even though we know we're probably starting most of these guys. Fitz, I'll start with you here. Which one player are you playing devil's advocate for and fading this week?
Well, gosh, Worm, the easy answer would be a Baltimore tight end, right? Like that's not going too far out of line to fade a Baltimore tight end. And it would probably be Isaiah Likely, since he hasn't had more than 3 targets in a game since that huge week 1 showing against the Chiefs. But no, Worm, I am not going to take the easy way out on this one. I'll give you a real answer. Like Terry McLaurin, he could smash against this Baltimore defense that has been really giving it up through the air, but he's only averaging 7.2 targets a game, which is not a big number for a guy who is the number 1 receiver and the alpha on his team. Hasn't been a huge amount of passing volume for Washington, although they've been very efficient. And, you know, Worm, like I know the Ravens have really given it up in the passing game, but like I don't hate their outside cornerback duo of Marlon Humphrey and Brandon Stevens. Like I think those guys are pretty decent, and PFF has both of those guys graded as top 40 cornerback. So theoretically, I could see a scenario where maybe Terry McLaurin just has sort of an okay game and doesn't smash. But and by the way, we're calling this the DMV matchup. Is that right? I learned that from you on the Start Sit show the other day. Doesn't mean we're going to wait in a long line to watch this game. It just means what is DMV again?
No,
DC?
It's the geographical area around. So it's like DC, Maryland, Virginia is like the most common way. There are people who will say like, well, Baltimore doesn't count as a DMV. You have to be closer into DC. It's actually somewhat of a debatable definition, but it's roughly DC and the surrounding areas in Maryland and Virginia are known as the DMV. I brought this up on Thursday, and Erickson and Fitz were like, "What the heck are you talking about?"
I'm scratching my head over here. Like, what?
I had forgotten that I was talking to people who didn't spend their whole lives in the DMV, and I just used it offhand. But that is what's referred to. It is not the Department of Motor Vehicles. That I can assure you. I'm really interested by the McLaurin pick. So the Ravens, like, the defense has been good against non-elite receivers. It's been, we saw it in the Buffalo game, right? Like Buffalo is a good offense led by a superhuman quarterback, but they didn't have that like true alpha on the outside, and the Ravens were able to shut them down. The guys who have torched them were Rashee Rice in week 1 and Devontae Adams in week 2, and, Brock Bowers as well. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins in week 5, CeeDee Lamb to a degree in week 3. So the question is like, does Terry McLaurin kind of rise to that level of receiver? I think he's really darn good. I don't think he's Devontae Adams or Jamar Chase. So I'm really curious to see how they do that. The other thing, too, is like the Ravens defense is built through the spine. Typically, you did mention the outside corners, who I think are a little underrated, Fitz, but like they want people to be thrown to the middle of the field, too. And the Commanders, like Jayden Daniels wants to throw, down the sideline. Like he wants to throw to the outside more so than a lot of rookie quarterbacks do. So it's really kind of a fascinating like clash of styles. The Ravens, and the Ravens on offense like to go through the middle of the field. That's where Lamar is most comfortable. So two very different quarterbacks in that respect in terms of where on the field they like to throw. Debro, what do you expect out of both McLaurin and also who would be your fade?
I think McLaurin's going to have a good game. But, I understand playing devil's advocate here because, we want to pick somebody that everybody's probably high on for this segment. And while I don't have the cold water to throw on McLaurin, I do have a guy to throw cold water on. I think the easy name here for it is Brian Robinson, considering the Ravens, their secondary has been bad. Their run defense remains elite. They're allowing the fewest rushing yards per game right now, 4th lowest explosive run rate. So Brian Robinson Jr. for me would be the low-hanging fruit, but I'll bring up Zay Flowers here. Considering I know the Commanders' secondary is not amazing. They are playing better, but the case to be made against Zay Flowers is simply Baltimore runs it down their throat. Derrick Henry has a smash game. They don't have to throw a bunch. Washington might. But again, that's the way that Zay Flowers, if he fails this week, it's because Lamar gets it done on the ground, and so does Derrick Henry, and there's not much scoring, much less like negative game script to be had.
Yeah, it's a good point. If you look at these two teams, like both can throw the ball, both can run the ball, both are not great against the pass. The one unit that is kind of like really built to stop the other is the Ravens' run defense. It's the one point where they're not kind of on the same level between these two teams right now, at least through 5 weeks. So I'm really curious to see how that pans out. We talked about this a bit on the Thursday show, D-Bro. So I'm curious to get your opinion. What the Commanders have done has been really impressive, like particularly in the running game. And obviously it's such a huge benefit to have a guy like Jaden Daniels that makes just everything easier in the running game. Do you think the Ravens defense, I mean, nobody has faced a mobile quarterback more than the Ravens defense have in practice in the last half dozen years? Do you think that gives them an advantage over a team like, the Commanders and a quarterback like Jaden Daniels? Not that they're the exact same player, but just they're not going to be shell shocked by seeing a quarterback who's crazy fast and crazy athletic because they see it every day.
I think in the way of setting a QB spy, handling the rushing utility, I believe so. But I also think there's something to be said, and I'm not tossing shade at Lamar here. I love Lamar. But I think there's something to be said also for Jaden Daniels' ability as a passer. And if we want to talk about who the better passer is, I think you can make a case for Jaden Daniels. So I think there's a lot of similarities there as far as the rushing utility, but I still think that there's a lot of differences there because, and I know it sounds like I'm being hyperbolic. I know Lamar is.
Yeah, Deeper, we're not doing devil's advocate anymore. Okay, you don't need to make something up here.
I'm not making anything up, man. Anybody push back against me? How does Jaden Daniels not an amazing passer? And you can make the case he's a better passer than Lamar.
Jaden Daniels is really good. I don't think he's a better passer than Lamar, but he is really
well, of course, you're not going to say it. I would like to hear.
I'm allowed to have opinions that are supportive of the Ravens.
But are you allowed to have opinions that are non?
My opinion that a rookie who's played 5 games is not a better passer than a 2-time NFL MVP, I don't think is because of being a homer. But Daniels is really good. That's not to fade Daniels. Like he's better than I expected. I will say that, like, full stop. Like, very definitively. This is a really fun game. Like I said, we were kind of fading just to paint the narrative, but like start everybody in this game. The total is 51.5. Do you guys like the over or the under? Fitz, what do you think?
I never like betting totals. I never go over with totals over 50. Just too many ways for it to be short circuited. Someone goes on a long 80-yard drive and then fumbles at the 3-yard line, and all of a sudden the over is looking horrible. So I tend not to bet any NFL game over if it's got a total 50 or higher.
Yeah, I'm with Fitzy here. I think there are easy paths to this game scoring a lot and still hitting the under. And that just the way that this game fails is just straight up from play volume. Washington's not running fast as an offense. Baltimore, if you give them a chance to slow down and run the ball with Derrick Henry, they will do that. So I think that's the easy path to an under here.
Life's too short to take the under. This is the most fun matchup of the week. It's the most fun quarterback matchup of the week. I don't care what the number is. Just take the over. Because, I mean, if you're sitting there and this is like a 38-35 game on Sunday afternoon during the witching hour, you're going to be kicking yourself. Like, obviously it is. These are the two best offenses in football to a degree this season. All right, let's go to the next question. We went a little long on that one. Cardinals at Packers. Dontayvion Wicks. Fitz, he let everybody down in week 5, was the most popular kind of waiver wire pickup, start right away, auto smash guy of the week. Didn't pan out. Are we going back to that well in week 6?
It depends. Is Romeo Dobbs going to play? And more important, is Christian Watson going to play? It sounds as if Dobbs will play, suspended for a game after going AWOL from practice a week ago. He is back at practice. Christian Watson also back at practice, rather unexpected. Debro and I were talking about this before the show. We both tend to think he's going to not come back. And even if Dobbs and Watson both play, Wicks is going to get some snaps, but he's probably not going to have the sort of snap share he would have if Watson was out. The last 2 games, Wicks has played around 75%, 76% of the offensive snaps. When everyone is healthy for the Packers at wide receiver, he's been closer to 50%. So that's kind of important, just, like more opportunities. Obviously, I've got him just inside the top 30 at wide receiver as of now. But if Watson plays, I'll probably have Wicks closer to mid 30s, late 30s in the wide receiver rankings.
Yeah, we have this new tool, the Are They Playing tool on Fantasy Pros. It does give a pretty decent chance for Christian Watson. That's just based on seeing limited practice both day, Wednesday and Thursday. That's all the information we have as of the time we're recording this. So it gives Watson about an 81% chance of playing. I want to see what happens Friday before I kind of really operate under the assumption that Watson will be playing. I tend to lean towards him not. Our tool does disagree with that, though. Debra, what are you doing with Wicks this week? And let's assume that Watson doesn't play, because I think if Watson plays and Dobbs is on the field, I think it's not really much of a question at all anymore. But
yeah, I agree.
Let's assume that the path is there again, similar to the way it was in week 5. Are you starting Dontayvion Wicks this week?
I am starting Dontayvion Wicks, and I agree with Fitzy. I don't think Watson plays this week. I think the tool will project more in that direction, considering the other part about it is, and this is, the tool is built off of AI and the data and things like that. We also have to factor in that the Packers are conservative with injuries. So because he's practicing and stuff like that, things that, can be captured and can't be captured, I do think the Green Bay usually leans a little bit more on the conservative side. So I think that Watson doesn't play. So looking at Wicks, I think this is the flop lag game. I think this is the game that we thought we were getting last week with Dontayvion Wicks, that we get it this week. And so right now I've got Dontayvion Wicks as my wide receiver 24 in rankings. I understand everybody got burned. The other thing about it is if he converts that, what was it, Fitzy, a 53-yarder that maybe he takes for a touchdown? If he converts that last week, then everybody is singing praises, and the Dontayvion Wicks narrative is totally different. So one play making that big of a difference between everybody being like, why you told me to start him, versus, oh, I'm so glad I started him. Yay, he had a good game. I'm not going to push back. I'm not going to go too far in one direction about saying Wicks had a terrible game, because there were other factors that led to that game, i.e. the Rams changing up their entire cornerback rotation and then playing better because of it. So how we were projecting that game versus how it ran out is different. And there are some factors that even, we're projecting, we're looking at numbers and stuff. Teams do things and change things up. Obviously, when you're a bottom 3 pass defense, you need to. And looking at this matchup this week, I don't care. The Cardinals can roll out whoever they want to at cornerback, pull a practice squad guy, sign free agent, do whatever you want to. Even their current starters, none of them can hang with these Packers wide receivers. They're all not great. So I think this is the game this week for Wicks that we thought we were getting last week.
Starting Dontayvion Wicks has been a roller coaster, also a roller coaster this NFL season, and it's moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, running it in from the 1 or an 80-yard bomb. We don't care how they score touchdowns. We just want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. We've got 2 matchups with totals over 50 points this week, both Dallas, Detroit, and also the DMV battle between Baltimore and Washington. Both games look fantastic, with the Lions laying a field goal, the Ravens laying 6.5 points. Lines and odds subject to change on those, of course, but one thing for sure is we are definitely getting some touchdowns in those games. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's go to Texans-Patriots. The Drake Maye era kicks off this Sunday. How does this impact the Patriots for fantasy purposes? Is Maye himself playable if you're desperate, Debra?
Maye is not playable, and I know that people are going to hate that. I can't say this clear enough. I cannot stand what the Patriots are doing to Drake Maye in this matchup. I cannot stand the fact that after 5 weeks, and we have proven that the offense is not good enough, the scheme is not good enough, and the offensive line is not good enough to support a conducive environment for a rookie quarterback. After 5 weeks of proof, this is a bad team in a bad situation. This is the week that the Patriots decide they're going to start Drake Maye, when they have fielded an offensive line that has allowed the 2nd highest pressure rate and the 6th lowest time to pressure. and you face a Houston D-line that is fourth in pressure rate, all I can say is good luck for Drake Maye. I'm sorry that the Patriots are doing this to you. I'm sorry to the fan base that this is happening. And this lowers the floor and ceiling for every skill player in this offense right now. And this is not hate against Drake Maye. This is a terrible matchup, and he is being put into a horrible situation.
I fully agree. I love Drake Maye, the player, and I'm really excited about his future. I do not understand picking this game as the one. Like, it really, I'm not the first person to say this, but really just feel like they just kind of succumb to fan pressure. And I think
that works out well for rookie quarterbacks.
I think it's a bad decision. Like, I really don't get it. Fitz, what do you think? Is this a scenario where are we downplaying? Like, this is a really talented guy, and maybe he does help some of these skill players and move the needle, at least on fantasy, even if not make them all superstars, or are we just kind of fading everything here?
I am not nearly as aggrieved about the decision to plug Maye into the lineup as you guys are. I know our friend Matt Harmon had a long rant about this. Like, there is no perfect time. I mean, you could give him an entire redshirt rookie year, but I don't think the Patriots were ever going to take the Packers' plan on that. The Packers always had Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers to have the luxury of redshirting their rookie quarterback. And obviously with Jacoby Brissett, Patriots kind of want to speed up the timetable a little bit. As for starting him, I don't think it would be completely crazy to plug Drake Maye into your lineup. And in fact, in the Fantasy Pros Content Team League, I am going to be starting Drake Maye against the Welsh this week because I really cut corners at the quarterback position. Look, Maye's passing numbers against the Texans probably are not going to be pretty. And I agree, like, I do not want to start Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, Hunter Henry, any pass catcher for the Patriots. But Drake Maye is a willing and able runner, and we saw that at the University of North Carolina, where in his 2 seasons as a starter, he averaged 11.4 rushing attempts per game and 44.1 rushing yards per game. And bear in mind that in the college game, sack yardage counts against a quarterback's rushing yardage, so he probably would have been up over 50 rushing yards a game. A rookie quarterback making his first start in the NFL is going to be confused by a lot of what he sees. Like, he is going to see coverages that just completely flummox him. Easiest thing for him to do is just tuck the ball away and run. And while it's highly doubtful that Maye is going to get 200 passing yards in this game, I could see him going for 40 or 50 rushing yards easily. And in fact, like, I have hammered rushing overs on Drake Maye. If he rushes for like 12 yards, I'm going to be eating Chef Boyardee out of the can on Monday morning, boys. So, but if it's a 50-yard rushing day for Drake Maye, lobster thermidor on Monday.
You'll be shipping us lobster.
Steak non well done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I get your point about, like, there's no perfect time to do this. At the same time, like, I look in this 3-week stretch, Miami, Houston, Jacksonville. Why pick Houston? Like, if you wanted to start him right around this, in this kind of first half of October, I'd much rather he started against Miami or Jacksonville than the Texans defense. I guess is all my point. It just seems like a particularly difficult one going up against D'Amico Ryans. But maybe, I mean, I love the player, so maybe he will surprise and be good. I want to go to the next question because it's basically the same one. The Spencer Rattler era kicks off this Sunday. How does this impact the Saints for fantasy purposes? Is Rattler himself playable if you're desperate? So basically the same question, but for a different rookie quarterback. Fitz, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I'm worried here. And I like Rattler and took him in a couple of dynasty rookie drafts in the spring, but I think his debut could be pretty rough, even against a Buccaneers pass defense that was completely fricasseed by the Atlanta Falcons the last time we saw them. Rattler probably did not get the same sort of reps in training camp that Drake Maye would have gotten, because Drake Maye was the clear and obvious succession plan in New England, whereas Rattler was, kind of brought in, I think, just basically to back up Derek Carr this year. So I have Rattler ranked QB 27 out of 28 starting quarterbacks. Sorry, Aiden O'Connell. And I have Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed ranked as wide receiver 4s this week. And I've Alvin Kamara. Like, I'm docking him. I've got him outside the top 5 at running back. I'm just not optimistic about the Saints offense this week.
Rattler did say that he wants to pepper Chris Olave with targets, which, the volume could be enough to keep Olave higher than that, as long as the level of plays reaches at least a bare minimum.
He's not doing 7-on-7s in practice, man. This is going to be a different story.
They are, by the way, Drake Maye and Spencer Rattler are back to back in ECR, QB 26 and QB 27. So they're both right there. In our Fantasy Pros only, our staff rankings, Bo Nix separates the two. It goes Maye, Nix, then Rattler in QB 25, QB 26, QB 27. Debra, what do you think about Rattler in terms of what you expect out of him this week and what he could mean for guys like Shaheed and Olave?
I just going to sound like the wet blanket for both these rookie quarterbacks. I don't really understand why you're starting Rattler over Jake Haener, who was the backup last week and went into the game. It feels like a front office thing. Like I don't know why Jake Haener doesn't get the start. But because again, like Rattler's probably had hardly any practice time. Go back to training camp, go working as the QB3 on the roster. He's gotten no reps. And all of a sudden, like you're going to give him starter reps starting early this week and think that's going to really catch him up and build rapport with these wide receivers now. It's rough, man. I'm with Fitzy on this one. And before Kirk Cousins diced up this secondary, we have to understand that before that game, this secondary allowed the 4th lowest passer rating in CPOE and the 5th lowest yards per attempt. So Kirk Cousins massively changing the math there for how the Buccaneers pass defense looks for the entire season as far as season-long stats really has to get brought up. And Todd Bowles loves to blitz everybody, 8th highest blitz rate. You're telling me he's not going to turn up the heat and blitz the ever-loving crap out of Spencer Rattler behind a banged-up offensive line? Again, this is, if I'm the Bucs, you blitz the ever-living hell out of him, you stop the run, and you force Spencer Rattler to beat you. And I don't see it happening. So yes, I'm with Fitzy. I'm dropping Shaheed and Olave are going to be in that wide receiver 3/4 area code. I think that both of them can get volume. But again, we have to go back to the target quality that they're going to receive. I don't know if the volume is going to be enough to overcome that.
Let me add one more thing about this game. Like Taysom Hill dealing with fractured ribs. I know he's listed as questionable for this game. If he plays, I want to use him at tight because I think they will give him a lot of work if he is able to suit up for this one. Like he would be inside my tight end 1 range if he plays.
That's actually kind of along the lines with what I was going to follow up with, which is what are you doing with just the running game in general for the Saints? Do you think that, the Bucs defense is going to be so honed in on the running game that's going to be very difficult for, guys like Kamara to do anything? Or are you still kind of ranking him because he's going to get so much volume, you would think, with a rookie quarterback in his first start?
I mean, I'm docking him. I've got him RB7, but there's under no circumstances am I sitting Alvin Kamara.
Sure.
No, where's he at in ECR, Worm? Because I can tell you I'm definitely going to be below consensus.
He's like 3 or 4, I want to say.
He is at, he's at 4, yeah.
I've got him at RB10 right now. I think with the workload, he still deserves, and actually that's a little bit too kind to him. I'm going to drop him to RB11.
By the way, we're giving him an 81% chance to play on the Are They Playing tool with his hip injury, limited practice on Thursday.
Like in the rankings, I have Josh Jacobs, I have James Conner above him, and surprisingly enough, because I know this will probably raise some eyebrows, but the matchup is awesome, I have Tony Pollard ahead of Alvin Kamara this week.
Nice. I think that's justifiable. Given everything, I think you're right. It will raise eyebrows, but I can see the logic there. Let's go to the next question. Browns at Eagles, coming off the bye. It looks like as of the last time I looked at practice reports, Philly was going to be getting back its top 2 receivers in AJ Brown and DeVonta Smith. Where are we ranking those guys plus Jalen Hurts with the Eagles returning something closer to full strength? I mean, I'm assuming we're starting them obviously, but how aggressively are we ranking these guys in their first game back, Debro?
Jalen Hurts is QB3 behind only Lamar and Jaden Daniels. I've got AJ Brown as where are you at, AJ Brown? I got him at wide receiver 5 for the week, and DeVonta Smith is at tight end 19. I think the only player out of that passing game that I'm worried about or fading because of the matchup, and both their star receivers being back this week, is Dallas Goedert. So Goddard is probably going to be, just because of the state of the position, a low-end tight end 1, but I'm not really high on his prospects this week. But all the rest of the guys, I mean, we shouldn't be scared of the Cleveland Browns defense at this point. Their offense can't sustain drives. They're going to be out there a ton. Their cornerbacks are kind of banged up. I think this is a really good, sneaky get right spot for the Philly offense.
Yeah, I would pretty much like to avoid Goddard if it's at all possible, just whenever Brown and Smith are both on the field, generally. Fitz, what are you doing with the passing game? Kind of all systems go here?
Yep, business as usual. Jalen Hurts, QB3. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 5, and DeVonta Smith, wide receiver 19. A perfect match with Debro. We should be on the newlywed game.
Wow.
Do they still have that? Worm, is that a totally opaque reference for you, the newlywed game? Where
it's a translucent reference. I'm vaguely aware of it, but I've never watched it.
Okay. Yeah, the newlyweds had to match answers. They were asked a series of questions. Do they know their spouses? And like had to see if they match correctly.
I feel like I've been to like weddings and rehearsal dinners where they do variations of it between the couple and everybody watches, but I have not watched the actual show.
Very nice use of the word translucent, by the way.
Real quick aside, favorite sick day game show.
Oh, it was Price is Right.
It
was always Price is Right. Always. Has to be.
I'm with you.
I didn't really watch TV during the weekdays. I wasn't allowed. The only TV I was allowed to watch during the weekdays was sports because my parents knew I needed at least that, but I didn't really watch regular TV.
I didn't know you were
Amish. Worm's parents were like, "You will grow up to be a sports media guy. Sit in front of the TV now."
Yeah, that was my homework essentially. When I think about my favorite fall activities, there are plenty of fun adventures on the list, but right at the top every fall is going to be football games live. Some of my favorite all-time memories watching the Ravens have come right inside M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, cheering along with thousands of fellow Ravens fans in prime time. And I'll be checking another NFL stadium off my list later this month when the Ravens head to Cleveland. I'll be going to that game with a handful of our Fantasy Pros colleagues. I'm really excited about that. Good to see everybody live and in person. When we order our tickets, we'll be using Game Time. They've got a new feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. The list of my favorite features on the Game Time app is too long to read everything, but here are some standouts for me personally. I love the Game Time Picks curation, obviously, especially since I can use it for not just sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I also love the all-in pricing, so there are no surprise fees at checkout. There's nothing in the world more infuriating to me than thinking I know what I'm about to spend on a purchase, then getting hit with a surprise fee at the last second. That doesn't happen with Game Time. Plus, I also appreciate the seat views to get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you commit to buying. The customer service is excellent as well. Their support team has helped me out on more than one occasion buying last-minute tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FANTASYPROS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. By the way, I also didn't really get many sick days home. I had to be like a certain level of sick to skip school, and that level of sick was usually I was like falling asleep in my bed and passing out all day if I was that.
So you never pulled the thermometer on the light bulb trick for him?
No.
I mean, never, no.
I really liked school.
It doesn't feel good.
I like never wanted to miss school. If I did, it was because I was actually feeling really unwell. My dad's a teacher, so like that was just kind of ingrained in me, I guess. But you see your friends at school. Wow. Like I think school gets a bad rap. I think school's kind of fun to go.
Your parents ran a very, very efficient boot camp. Okay, you will be a sports media guy. You will go to school, and you will like it.
I'm not sure they still to this day understand what I do for a living. So maybe not the sports media stuff.
That's like, funny considering everything.
They're like, you tweet and talk about football and somebody actually pays you for it. This is like a side gig, right? Like, no, this is the job. Let's go to the next question here. Chargers at Broncos. Are the Chargers worth starting against what has been one of the best, maybe the best defense in the NFL so far this season? Are any Chargers worth starting in this one coming off their bye, Debro?
J.K. Dobbins-ish. He's a flex play, a low-end RB2 probably. Really an RB3, but he's in play only because of the volume. But outside of that, no, you're sitting on your Chargers this week.
What do you think, Fitz?
Yeah, Worm, I got to give you credit. You were ahead of the curve on this a few weeks ago when you sort of recognized that the Broncos as having one of the best defenses in the NFL. And I was kind of, lightly pushed back and said, like, let's see a few more games before we declare that. I'm ready to declare that. Vance Joseph has just done a fantastic job with this unit. But there are two Chargers I think I would be willing to start. J.K. Dobbins, and as Debro mentioned, purely a volume play. I've got him RB18. But yes, the Broncos rank 6th in DVOA against the run and have a lot of the 10th fewest fantasy points to running backs. But Dobbins has averaged 17.7 touches a game over his last 3 games. So that's a pretty safe volume floor to at least get him as in your lineup as a flex or an RB2. And then I would be willing to play Ladd McConkey. Like if the Broncos have shut down cornerback Patrick Surtain Jr., follow Quentin Johnston around, Justin Herbert might look to take advantage of the easier matchup, not necessarily an easy matchup, but easier for McConkey against Broncos slot corner Jaquan McMillan, who's yielding a 70% catch rate and 0.27 fantasy points per route into his coverage, according to PFF.
Yeah, Debra, what do you think about Ladd McConkey this week? I typically like rookie receivers coming off their bye week, especially talented, like kind of high level rookie receivers. So that's appealing to me. What do you think about the matchup for McConkey?
I think the matchup's fine. I think looking at McConkey, he's going to get the most volume out of any of these guys, especially. And it's tough to know who that the Broncos are going to stick Surtain on. My guess would be Quentin Johnston. But again, that's they give Johnston enough respect. They might just not shadow anybody, but you have to also, either way it goes, you're going to bump down both those guys because either Palmer or Johnston is going to get shadow coverage or at least have to deal with Surtain for half the game. So I do think the target volume is there for McConkey. So, it's a good call by Fitz. Like just straight up in a PPR league, he's going to get the volume. If he scores, especially if they're in negative game script, then yeah, he can pay off.
Let's go to that Lions-Cowboys game I mentioned earlier. Sam LaPorta was tight end 1 in our expert consensus draft rankings this season. He's been tight end 18 on a per-game basis so far. And if you take out week 1, it's even worse, tight end 31 per game on the season since week 2. That's behind Mark Andrews even. Coming out of Detroit's bye week, are we going to finally see Sammy Ballgame get going again? Debra, I'll start with you as the LaPorta guy.
I could see an okay game for him. I don't think it's a smash spot for him. Dallas versus tight ends. Yeah, you could make a case. Okay, they're tied for the 4th most receiving touchdowns, but over the middle of the field, that can easily be Amon-Ra St. Brown time. They're 16th in yards per reception. I think it's an okay matchup, but I don't think it's a smash matchup. Like I think LaPorta is probably somewhere in that mid to low end tight end 1 range this week. So I don't think this is like the get right spot for Sammy Ballgame.
One of our player debates, Debro, on the Thursday show was Sam LaPorta versus Tucker Kraft. Who would you like in that one?
Ooh, jeez. I'll take Kraft in that one, but I think it's close. I think they're in the same area code.
They're back to back in ECR, tight end 5 and tight end 6. Fitz,
yeah, I've got Kraft as tight end 5, and I got LaPorta as tight end 6 right now.
Yeah, Fitz, we talked a bit about this when we talked about LaPorta versus Kraft, but like even setting the Kraft part of the equation aside, like do you think this could be the week where we see LaPorta get going again?
I don't know, Worm. It's weird. He is averaging 3.5 targets a game, and LaPorta has not seen more than 5 targets in any game this season. Now, part of it is that Ben Johnson just wants to run the ball down people's throat this year. He is not messing around. Yep. And in the Lions' 3 wins, they're 3-1. In the 3 wins, they're only averaging 23 pass attempts. So, like, if they get a lead, they are running the ball, and they are road favorites against the Cowboys. So, if they get a lead here, probably not going to see a lot of passing volume for Goff. So as of now, I've got LaPorta ranked higher than Kraft. I've got him tight end 5 and Kraft tight end 6. I think I'm going to flip-flop those two. But who knows? Maybe the Cowboys will perk up Sam LaPorta because when he faced the Cowboys last year, he had a season-high 12 targets, 7 catches for 84 yards. So I don't know. Maybe he'll see that Dallas star and get fired up.
The other factor here is if Dallas gets Deron Bland back this week. I don't think that he plays in this game, But if he does play in this game, that also will push some volume to Sam LaPorta in a way, because again, avoiding the outside corners for Dallas if Blaine is back.
Do you think, Debro, that we've discussed enough in this first month of the season the disappointment Sam LaPorta has been? I feel like a lot of the conversation has been tight end is a disappointment. Oh, you shouldn't have gone early on tight end because of guys like Mark Andrews and Kelsey and also Sam LaPorta. I feel like there hasn't been, like, LaPorta was number one tight end in most people's rankings. I know it wasn't for yours. You had Trey McBride, but in general, like, he was the consensus tight end one, like, with a bullet, like, by a mile. And he hasn't just been a disappointment relative to that standing. He's been downright bad. Again, tight end 31 since week 2 on a per game basis. So are we like kind of discussing enough what a level of disappointment? I mean, not that he's fallen off a cliff in his career. He's still so young. He's only a second-year player, but it's been really bad compared to what we expected.
It has been, and I think some of the Sam LaPorta, as far as like being the letdown, I think that has gotten lost in the conversation because I think all the spotlight, and deservedly so, I think instead of so much of the attention on Detroit being on Sam LaPorta being a letdown for fantasy, I think instead of us talking about that and that being leading the conversation, we've been giving a lot more shine to Jameson Williams and he's in the midst of a breakout season. So I think that it's twofold. I think the JMO breakout season is what has hurt Sam LaPorta immensely, but also we haven't discussed that enough because we've been giving so much shine to JMO, but honestly, rightfully so.
Before we get to the key question for Sunday night's matchup, I want to ask you guys about your Uber Eats Sunday night meals of the week. Debro, what must-order food gets you reaching for your Uber Eats app for great game day deals when you think of New York?
I think Fitzy and I might be hand-holding on this one, but for good reason. It's the 101, dude. And I don't care if this is breakfast. I don't care if it's Brenner. It's got to be bagels, and it's got to be cream cheese and smoked lox on there. That's it. I think this is easy.
Fitz?
Yeah, I mean, a bagel with cream cheese and lox from a New York deli is an A+ breakfast for sure. But also another A+ option from a New York deli. And my dad's from New York, so I was introduced to this by my grandfather. The pastrami sandwich in a good New York deli. Like, I mean, the first time I ever went into a deli with my grandpa and ordered a pastrami sandwich at his urging, I could hear angels singing. It was just amazing.
That's actually a great call because I'm not a big pastrami guy, but I did. I went to Katz Delicatessen when I was in New York many years ago, and you know I had to go for kind of that classic pastrami style, and it was very good. I'm not a cream cheese and lox guy. I'm just a cream cheese and that's it guy on my bagels, which are good. But guys, the answer is pizza. It's New York style pizza. It's far superior to Chicago style deep dish style pizza. Barely qualifies as pizza. Fitz, you are a Midwest guy. What's your take on New York versus Chicago pizza?
Oh, well, New York pizza is amazing. And like, there's no comparison. But look, the Chicago deep dish, like that is trash. But Chicago tavern style thin crust is fantastic. But the deep dish is casserole, man.
It was only the last couple of years I learned that there even is such a thing as like Detroit style pizza, and like all these Midwest cities have their own style.
The sauce goes on top of the cheese. It's what? Detroit style is good. It's got a real like caramelized crust. It's actually really tasty.
Oh,
I will, Debro.
Sounds odd.
We're going to be.
I feel intrigued.
We're going to be in Las Vegas early next year, Debro. I will take you to a place that serves some mean Detroit style pizza, and you will be
done.
You'll be thanked.
Done.
So there you have it. Our Uber Eats Sunday night meals of the week. We've got bagels, we've got pastrami sandwiches, and we've got classic New York style pizza. Uber Eats has the best game day deals all season long. Order now for game day. Guys, this Sunday night, the reason we talked about New York, it's Bengals at Giants. We did get word, and it was kind of trending this direction anyway, but we got word during this recording. Malik Nabers is going to miss another game with the concussion. So quickly, before we get into my key question for the game, like the rest of season, are you guys starting to get a little concerned about just how long this is taking? Or once he's back, he'll be back and you're not going to be worried at all, Debro?
I'm not worried at all. I think that concussions, and this kind of speaks to the severity of some, once these guys start ramping up, then you can kind of see symptoms kind of come back. I think this is more of, okay, he's out this week. I think that he returned to practice is good. So I project that he will be back for next week. And again, this is kind of one of those things like once they clear concussion symptoms, I mean, guys are full ramped up playing 100%. So I'm not willing to kind of dock the rest of the season outlook for Malik Nabers right now.
Same optimism, Fitz?
Yeah, same. I'm bummed out about it because I have Malik Nabers on a ton of teams, but I'm also not going to be the old man who gets mad at Malik Nabers for having gone to a Travis Scott concert the other night. And like, what's he doing? He's got a concussion. Why is he going to concerts? Yeah, I mean, like, didn't expect him to miss 2 games after getting the concussion in a Thursday night game, but, you know, hopefully we see him back in week 7. I think we will.
It's like in Seinfeld when Elaine sees David Puddy. She's like, but I broke up with him. And Jerry's like, and yet he continues to live. Like, yo, he had a concussion. And yet he continues to go out and live. It's fine. I agree.
What's Seinfeld again? I don't know.
We can't do this again, Debra. We don't have time to correct you in all your wrongness. The actual question I wanted to ask about the Giants, we had quite the coming out party for Tyrone Tracy Jr. in week 5. The Bengals run defense did do pretty well against Derrick Henry, all things considered, until that long run in overtime, but they pretty much bottled him up, up until that point. Do we think Tracy can take advantage of what had been a pretty poor rush defense in the prior 4 weeks before that week 5 performance against Henry? Debra, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, either one of these. I think Singletary is trending to play, and whoever's going to be the Giants' starting running back. So if Singletary's back, I think he gets the same role back. Or if it's Tracy, either one of these guys are going to be definitely a top 24 play, but looking at my rankings right now, probably a top 15 play because the matchup is fantastic. And yes, this really just comes down to it. Okay, right now, if you want to stop Baltimore or try to stop Baltimore, you stop the run. The Giants are passing the ball better than Baltimore is. And I think there's more to be said about, the duplicity of that offense. So I'm not saying Daniel Jones is playing quarterback better than Lamar, but I think that there are more weapons or ways to try to stop, or it's harder to stop the Giants right now. So
thinking Singletary comes back because he is trending that way for sure. 86% chance to play on our Are They Playing tool. So you don't think like kind of the cat's out of the bag with Tracy and like they're going to need to keep giving him more work? You think like it'll just go back to Singletary?
I think it's a veteran who's played really, really well as the starter. It's not like he's struggling. Good, yeah. And I don't think that, regardless of if you want to talk about, okay, a guy's not going to lose his job due to injury and coming back to this, and he had the clear workhorse role. If he's healthy enough to play, I think he gets the role back. Yeah.
What do you think about Tracy this week, Fitz?
Well, I mean, I do think that after maybe Singletary was operating as sort of this like underrated workhorse early in the season, maybe now they do carve out a role for Tyrone Tracy every week. And certainly they're not going to kick Singletary to the curb because he and Brian Daboll have this long history going back to their days in Buffalo together. But I'm ranking Singletary RB24 and Tracy RB38. And I'm really excited by what we saw from Tyrone Tracy. And Debra, I know he was a guy you liked a lot coming out of Purdue this year. For a guy who only made the switch from wide receiver to running back a couple of years ago, like he was decisive with his running last week in Seattle, and also ran really powerfully, forced 4 missed tackles last week, had 56 rushing yards after contact, and finished with 47 rushing yards over expected in that game, according to Next Gen Stats. So really impressive performance. I do think he is going to have some sort of role going forward. And I'm pretty excited about what we saw from Tyrone Tracy last week.
Yeah, it was definitely, if you compared his college, that was the biggest, or one of the biggest knocks that I had about him as a prospect, was he just looked like a guy who was still learning to adjust to the position, like trusting your blocks, following your blocks, the vision, things like that. And Daboll talked about that in the post-game presser, said we've really been working on him with, again, playing running back. And so seeing not only as decisive as he was, but the vision improve for Tracy, which that's what you want to see. Like he needs reps, and he's gotten reps, and they've worked on it a lot. So he was very impressive last week.
We'll move to our final question here. Before we do, I do want credit for not taking the bait on Debra's ludicrous statement that the Giants' passing game without Malik Nabers is somehow more threatening than Baltimore's passing game. So I want credit that I didn't bring that up.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I quarterbacks, going through dropbacks, going through progressions, doing more than, operating in a Todd Monken screen only offense. Yeah, I'll make that bet.
That's how the Ravens beat the Bengals, was screens only. Let's go to Bills at Jets. Josh Allen has been either QB1 or QB19 or lower in every week this season. No in between. Which Allen are we getting in week 6 against a Jets defense that now has a new coach with Robert Saleh out? Fitz, I'll start with you here.
Oh, man. Josh Allen was so hard to rank this week. I initially slotted him at like QB5 or QB6, but now I've got him all the way down at QB9. It's just, he does not have enough weapons in the passing game right now. If Khalil Shakir doesn't play, and it looks like he's probably not going to play. Dalton Kincaid has been disappointing. Just isn't doing anything after the catch at all, it seems. I would love to see Keon Coleman get more snaps out of the slot. Man, I'm begging for Keon Coleman big slot usage, and they're just lining him up outside and having him run this really limited route tree, which is just disappointing to see. Then it's Mac Hollins, Curtis Samuel, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Yuck. So plus it's a tough defensive matchup. I mean, we know the Jets have cornerbacks who can really cover. So Allen is going to have to do some damage as a runner to put up fantasy numbers this week. I think you're starting him, but man, my expectations are lowered.
What do you think, D-Bro? Again, QB1 or QB19 or worse in every game this season?
I'm over here squeaking as Fitz tells me his ranking because, again, we have not compared this and we have not talked about this prior, but we are hand-holding. He is QB9 in my ranks. I think low-end QB1, and you want to talk about weapons, and really, I mean, it's multiple things. It's not only, okay, Shakir is banged up, probably doesn't play. It's the usage of this offense. James Cook is also banged up and maybe doesn't play. So, downgrading the weapons as well as a tough matchup, as well as the way that Buffalo wins this game is by running the ball. So, yes, Josh Allen and the legs and the rushing utility necessitates that he still remain a QB1, but I'm not high on his passing prospects this week. He really needs to get a rushing touchdown, maybe 2, to probably still be a QB1 this week. And I know that's tough for Bills fans to hear, but it's the reality.
Let's wrap up with a quick, are you ranking him rest of season? Not just for this week, but in your rest of season rankings, Josh Allen is QB what, D-Bro?
Oh, right now, I've got him at QB3. Like the only 2 guys I've got over him are Lamar and Jane Daniels, but I think you can make the case that Josh Allen could be a mid or low end QB. If you were to tell me he was QB7 or QB8 in people's ranks, and they had Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, just to name a few, I wouldn't push back at all about that. So I think it's fluid. I think the other thing that we haven't discussed here is, what if Devontae Adams gets traded to Buffalo? I don't think we can truly rule that out. And I think that would change the math here massively for Josh Allen rest of season.
Fitz, same question, rest of season for Josh Allen.
I have him QB2 right now behind only Lamar Jackson, but Jaden Daniels versus Josh Allen is a really interesting debate. And right now I'm giving Josh Allen, I'm practicing veteran deference here, but I don't know if that's the right call.
All right, we'll wrap up there. Fun stuff today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for our Week 6 preview. Best of luck in your matchups this week for Fitz and D-Bro. I'm Ryan Wormeli, and we'll see everybody again next week.